Okay, so getting ready for this test on quadratics and finding the zeros of quadratics. And the first thing you need to know is that in order to do any of these methods, well, in order to do the quadratic formula, you want to have the quadratic set to 0. If you're wanting to find the zeros, they need to be set to 0. That's what it means to find the 0, is to set it equal to 0. So all the formulas we will, all the equations, sorry, that we'll give you will be set equal to 0 already. So let's start with these first two. It says to solve each equation with the quadratic formula. So I would recommend that you start off your test by writing the quadratic formula at the top of your paper. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. That's a c. I don't know why I wrote a twice. All over 2a. Okay? So write that down at the top of your test just to kind of help yourself out. And then the next thing is to label your A, your B, and your C. So A is 8, B is negative 7. We're not including our X's. C is positive 1. Okay? So you just kind of need to make sure you know what those are. So let's go to the formula. X equals negative. Put everything in parentheses. So negative 7 is the b, it goes in parentheses. So negative 7 plus or minus the square root b squared. Remember, once again, b goes in parentheses, squared, minus 4. Now what goes in a goes in parentheses. What goes in c, positive 1, goes in parentheses. All over 2, and then once again what goes in A goes in parentheses. Okay? So then we just simplify the pieces, okay? So we're going to simplify this piece right here, this piece right here, this piece right here, and this piece right here. We're going to simplify them, okay? So we have x equals, what is the opposite of negative 7? Well, that's positive 7. Okay, negative 7 squared is 49. So actually, I'm not going to simplify. I'm not going to simplify the minus sign. Okay, I'm just going to write it down. I'm just going to put the minus sign down, and I'm going to simplify 4 times 8 times 1, which is 32, and then 2 times 8, which is 16. Okay. So I just simplified the pieces that I could simplify. So then x equals, now what can I simplify? It's this piece right here. So what is 49 minus 32? It is 17. Over 16. All right. So then the next thing you need to ask yourself is, can this 17 be broken down? Can it be simplified at all? Square root of 17. And no, it cannot. And you should probably have somewhere a list of all your perfect squares. That will help you significantly in figuring out if something is a perfect square. So that's another thing I would recommend you do at the beginning of your test, is going to make yourself a list of perfect squares. And remember, this is 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5. Just to kind of help yourself out. And 17 is not, you cannot divide it by 16, is not divisible by 16. 17 is not divisible by 9, is not divisible by 4, and 1 is not going to help us any, okay? So we are done. And there are 2 answers here. You have x equals 7 plus square root of 17 over 16. That's one answer. The other answer is x equals 7 minus square root of 17 over 16. But because we don't like writing a whole lot, we're just going to write it the one time. Okay? Let's look at number 2. A is 5, B is a positive 8, and C is a positive 1. So we're going to use our formula again. X equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 8, which is, that was B, squared, minus 4, and then our A is 5, and our C is 1. And that's all over 2A. Okay, everything that we put in for a letter is put in parentheses. Not all the parentheses are 100% necessary, and if you can see that, that's fine, but you will never be wrong putting it in parentheses, and so more parentheses is always better than not enough parentheses. So now let's simplify our pieces. Once again, our pieces are going to be right here, right here, right here, and right here. I'm just going to simplify the pieces. Okay, this is just -5 right here. 8 squared is 64, so we have square root of 64. The minus sign comes down. 4 times 5 times 1 is 20. Oh, I'm sorry, I did 60. I said 64, but I wrote 16. Why did I do that? I said 64, but I wrote, who knows? 2 times 5 is 10. So then right here, we're going to do 64 minus 20. We're going to simplify that. And that's going to give us 44 over 10, okay? So we just simplified the pieces coming down. So now we're going to see if we can simplify this square root right here, okay? And the way we look at that is we look at our perfect squares. 44 is not divisible by 36. It's not divisible by 25. It's not divisible by 16. It's not divisible by 9. It is divisible by 4. And if you don't know that, you're just dividing it in your calculator and seeing if you're coming up with a whole number answer or not. So I'm going to just take it to the side. Square root of 44 is square root of 4 times square root of 11. Okay, because if I multiply those together, I get the square root of 4. So I'm just simplifying it. The square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 11 I can't simplify, so it just comes straight down. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it in for the square root of 44. Nothing else is changing. So I'm still going to have x equals -5 plus or minus, but I'm now going to put 2 square root 11 in instead of the 44 because they're equivalent. And then that's all over 10. Okay, and for our purposes, that's good enough. Okay, this is an answer we will accept on the test, and you'll get full points for that. You will notice that this is 2 answers, so you could break it down into 2 and write 2 different answers. And in fact, on the answer key, it is broken down into 2, but it's okay. You can write it down as x equals -5 plus 2 square root 11 over 10, and then the other answer is x equals -5 minus 2 square root 11 over 10. But you can write them together as well if you just want to save yourself some time or writing space.